In 1912, the world stood on the edge of change. The golden age was fading, and modern times were approaching fast. It was a simpler era when families spent summer afternoons together, creating memories that would last forever. Or so they thought. The photograph looks perfectly normal at first glance. A happy family sits on a checkered blanket in a peaceful forest clearing. The father, Charles Harrington, wears his best Sunday suit and smiles proudly at the camera. His wife, Eleanor, sits beside him in a flowing white dress, her hand gently resting on their youngest child. 10-year-old Thomas grins widely, showing his missing front tooth, while 7-year-old Clara clutches her favorite doll close to her chest. The scene captures everything beautiful about family life in 1912. Sunlight filters through the tall pine trees of Blackwood Creek, casting gentle shadows across the forest floor. Their wicker picnic basket sits nearby, overflowing with sandwiches and fresh fruit. The children's laughter seems to echo from the photograph itself. Everything about this moment screams joy, innocence, and the simple pleasures of a bygone era. The photographer had captured them at their most carefree. Charles had just finished telling a joke that made Eleanor laugh so hard she had to dab her eyes with her handkerchief. Thomas was excited about starting his new school term, while little Clara was more interested in showing everyone how her doll could sit up on its own. The warm August afternoon felt perfect for creating lasting family memories. For over a century, this photograph remained buried in a dusty archive, just another forgotten piece of local history. That changed when Dr. Evelyn Reed discovered it during her work as a digital archivist. Evelyn specialized in preserving historical photographs, scanning old glass plate negatives to save them for future generations. She had processed thousands of similar images, but something about this particular photograph caught her attention. Evelyn had dedicated her career to bringing forgotten history back to life. She found immense satisfaction in rescuing old photographs from decay and neglect. Each image told a story, preserved a moment that would otherwise be lost forever. Her work connected her to people from the past, making her feel like a guardian of their memories. Using high-resolution scanning technology, Evelyn could reveal details that were invisible to people from 1912. The original viewers could never have seen what modern equipment would uncover. As the image appeared on her computer screen, Evelyn noticed something strange in the background. Deep in the woods behind the smiling family stood a dark, vertical shape. At first, she dismissed it as nothing unusual. Old photographs often contained shadows, tree trunks, or minor flaws in the glass plates. But this shape was different. It was perfectly symmetrical and seemed deliberately placed. The more Evelyn stared at it, the more unnatural it appeared. Something about its position bothered her. It stood exactly where someone might hide while watching the family. The shape seemed to have an almost human quality, but its proportions looked wrong even from a distance. Evelyn had seen thousands of old photographs containing people in the background, but this figure struck her as distinctly odd. Its posture suggested intentional concealment rather than accidental inclusion in the frame. Professional curiosity took over. Evelyn decided to enhance the image further, hoping to solve the mystery of the strange shadow. She had no idea that her innocent investigation would uncover one of the most disturbing unsolved cases in New England history. Evelyn began by adjusting the contrast and brightness of the photograph. She used specialized software to sharpen the fuzzy details in the background. The process was methodical and time-consuming, requiring patience and technical skill. Slowly, the mysterious shape began to take clearer form. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The shadow was not a shadow at all. It was a figure, a tall, impossibly thin figure dressed in dark, formal clothing that looked decades out of date, even for 1912. But something was terribly wrong with its proportions. The arms were too long, stretching down past where normal hands should end. The torso was unnaturally narrow, like someone had stretched a person vertically beyond human limits. The clothing appeared to be from an even earlier era, perhaps the 1870s or 1880s. The style was formal and expensive, suggesting wealth or high social status. But the way the garments hung on the figure's impossible frame created an unsettling effect. Nothing about this entity looked natural or human. The figure stood partially hidden behind a large pine tree, but its positioning was unmistakable. It was watching the Harrington family. The way it held itself suggested deliberate concealment, as if it was trying to stay hidden while observing the cheerful picnic scene. Disturbed by her discovery, Evelyn decided to research the Harrington family. She hoped to find innocent explanations for the strange figure in their photograph. Perhaps it was a family friend, a local resident, or even another photographer working in the area that day. Her research began at the local historical society. The building was old and musty, filled with boxes of documents and artifacts that few people ever bothered to examine. The Harringtons were well documented in town records. Charles owned a successful timber mill that employed dozens of local workers. His business was thriving in 1912, providing lumber for the growing construction industry. Eleanor was active in church activities and community charity work. Their children attended the best schools and were described as polite, well-behaved youngsters. By all accounts, they were a model family that represented everything good about their community. Newspaper articles from 1912 painted a picture of perfect domestic happiness. The local paper frequently mentioned the Harringtons at social events, church functions, and community gatherings. They seemed to live charmed lives, respected by everyone who knew them. Eleanor was particularly beloved for her charitable work, while Charles served on several important town committees. The children were equally well regarded. Thomas excelled at his studies and played on the local baseball team. Clara was known for her sweet nature and her talent for drawing. Teachers spoke highly of both children, describing them as bright, curious, and well-mannered. Then Evelyn found something that changed everything. Buried in the newspaper archives was a small article dated exactly 1 week after the picnic photograph was taken. The headline made her heart skip a beat. Harrington family vanishes without a trace. The article described how the entire family had disappeared from their locked home during the night. Neighbors noticed that the family failed to appear at church on Sunday morning, which was completely out of character for the devoutly religious Harringtons. When concerned friends went to check on them, they found the house empty. All the doors were still locked from the inside. There were no signs of a struggle, no ransom notes, and nothing had been stolen. Even more puzzling, their personal belongings, including jewelry and money, remained untouched. The house looked as if the family had simply stepped out for a few minutes and planned to return shortly. Breakfast dishes were still on the table, half-eaten. Eleanor's sewing sat unfinished in her chair. Charles's reading glasses lay open beside his favorite book. Everything suggested a normal evening that had been suddenly interrupted. The local police launched an immediate investigation, but they found no clues. It was as if the family had simply vanished into thin air. Search parties combed the surrounding forests for days, but they discovered nothing. The case grew cold within weeks, eventually becoming just another unsolved mystery that locals preferred to forget. Evelyn realized she was looking at the last known photograph of the Harrington family. The cheerful picnic scene now felt haunting and ominous. The strange figure in the background was no longer just an odd photographic anomaly. It might be the only clue to what happened to 4 innocent people. She returned to the archives with new urgency, searching for any additional materials related to the family or the mysterious disappearance. Her hands shook as she went through box after box of old documents and photographs. In a different box of glass plate negatives, she found the photographer's original logbook. The entry for the Harrington picnic session contained a disturbing handwritten note in the margin. Subject felt uneasy, the photographer had written. Complained of being watched, had to cut session short. The photographer's name was William Morrison, a professional who had documented many local families during that era. His logbook was meticulous, recording details about each session including weather conditions, equipment used, and any notable incidents. The entry about the Harringtons stood out because of its unusual tone. This confirmed that the family was aware of some threatening presence during their picnic. The photographer himself had sensed something wrong that day, something that made him end the session earlier than planned. But Evelyn's most shocking discovery was yet to come. Buried deeper in the same archive box, she found a second glass plate negative from the same day. This photograph was taken just minutes after the first one, showing the family packing up their picnic supplies. The difference in their expressions was striking. Gone were the bright smiles and cheerful poses. Instead, the Harringtons looked worried and anxious, as if something had frightened them. Charles was hurriedly stuffing items into their picnic basket while Eleanor gathered the children close to her. Thomas had stopped smiling and kept glancing toward the tree line. Even little Clara had abandoned her doll and was clinging to her mother's dress. The transformation from joy to fear was unmistakable. With trembling hands, Evelyn scanned the second photograph. Her worst fears were confirmed. The tall figure was still there, but it had moved. It was no longer hiding behind the tree. Now it stood in the open, several yards closer to the family. While its features remained frustratingly unclear, its intent was obvious. This was not a passive observer. It was approaching them. The figure's movement between the two photographs proved that it was not a statue, tree, or photographic flaw. Something living had been stalking the Harrington family during what should have been a pleasant afternoon outing. The photographs captured the moment when a predator closed in on its prey. Desperate for answers, Evelyn expanded her research into local folklore and legends from the Blackwood Creek area. What she found in old town records and personal diaries made her question everything she thought she knew about reality. For generations, locals had whispered stories about a creature they called the Gentleman of the Pines. According to legend, this entity appeared as a tall, silent figure dressed in dark, outdated clothing. It would materialize in the deep woods, always maintaining distance from human observers. The stories claimed that whenever someone spotted the gentleman, a local resident would disappear within days. Over the decades, there had been numerous sightings of the mysterious figure. Hunters described seeing a tall shape watching them from between the trees, only to vanish when they tried to get a closer look. Children reported glimpsing the dark figure while playing near the forest edge, though adults dismissed these claims as imagination. Most people dismissed these tales as harmless rural superstition, ghost stories told around campfires to frighten children. The official police investigation into the Harrington disappearance never considered any connection to local folklore, but the descriptions of the gentleman from century-old sources matched the figure in Evelyn's photographs perfectly. The consistency of the descriptions across multiple generations was striking. Witnesses always described the same impossibly tall, thin figure in dark, formal clothing from an earlier era. They all mentioned the unnatural proportions and the sense of being watched by something that should not exist. Evelyn realized she might be looking at evidence that the oldest and darkest local legends were actually true. Using the most advanced forensic imaging software available, she focused on enhancing the second photograph where the figure appeared closer to the family. She isolated the mysterious shape and applied every digital enhancement technique she knew. The process took hours, but the results were worth the wait. What appeared on her computer screen defied explanation and challenged her understanding of reality itself. The enhanced image revealed that the figure had no discernible human face. Where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been, there was only a smooth, pale surface that looked like polished bone. This was not a person wearing a mask or standing in shadow. This was something fundamentally inhuman, something that should not exist in the natural world. The revelation was so shocking that Evelyn had to step away from her computer. She had expected to find some rational explanation for the strange figure, but instead she had uncovered evidence of something that challenged everything she believed about reality. The evidence was now undeniable. The Harrington family had encountered something beyond human understanding during their innocent picnic outing. The photographs documented their final hours, showing them being stalked by an entity that had stepped out of local folklore and into terrible reality. Evelyn finally understood why the photographer felt uneasy that day. She knew why the family looked increasingly worried as the session progressed, and she had a pretty good idea what happened after they packed their picnic basket and headed home for the last time. The official fate of the Harrington family remains unsolved to this day. Police files still list them as missing persons, though everyone involved in the original investigation is long dead. But thanks to modern technology and one dedicated archivist, we now have a glimpse into the horrible truth. This cheerful family photograph became something far more sinister, a piece of evidence documenting an encounter with something that should not exist. It serves as a chilling reminder that the old stories our ancestors whispered in fear might have been warnings rather than entertainment. Sometimes the most innocent moments hide the darkest secrets, and horrors can lurk in the blurry backgrounds of our own histories, waiting patiently to be discovered. The next time you look at an old family photograph, remember the Harringtons. Pay attention to the shadows in the background. You never know what might be watching from the edges of the frame. What do you think happened to the Harrington family? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story as unsettling as we did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more historical mysteries, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching.